Hey, are you working on...
Beethoven Symphony No. 5 Movement 3 Trio.
Me too. I've been playing it for years and I still learn something new about it every single time that I work on it. In this series of videos, I'll go over not only some of the fundamental ways of approaching the excerpt, but also share some of the ways that I like to practice it that I've found helpful, as well as some other relevant details that might be useful in an audition setting. So without any further delay, let's get into it. I'm pretty sure this excerpt gets asked on just about every audition list that I've seen, and for good reason. There's a lot you can tell about a player just by hearing them play the trio. Intonation, rhythm, tone, cleanliness and consistency of the stroke, and line shaping are all things that great orchestral players need to do in order to win a job. In this video, I'll first go over a few fingering and bowing suggestions for anyone who maybe hasn't worked on this before. Then we'll talk about the stroke, followed by some practice suggestions, as well as some strategies for shaping the lines of the excerpt, and other ideas for working toward maximizing the presentation at an audition. So for this excerpt, we'll start up bow on the pickup note. From here, you have a few options for bowings to land on another down bow at the next set of eighth notes. Some people do a down down here, others do an up here, and others still might do an up here or somewhere else that they feel comfortable. As for me personally, I like to do the up here since I feel like it kind of helps to accentuate the top of the phrase and sort of get it to change directions as we make the descent back towards the end of the line. You're also going to want to do an up here unless maybe you prefer doing a down down here. What bowing do you like for this excerpt? Let me know down in the comments. For fingerings, in general, I try to avoid open strings for the most part. For example, you can close this G so you can vibrate it. Close this D to avoid unnecessary string crossings in the eighth notes. Same thing here, no need to unnecessarily cross strings. The same idea is used here. Think of this group of notes as a zone, then this group of notes as a zone, then these. The stroke is what really makes the style for this excerpt. In a previous video about Mozart 40, I talked about an off stroke having essentially three components: attack, sustain, release. In Mozart, I described it as a short attack, short sustain, and tapered release. For this period of Beethoven, I like to think of it as a short attack, a slightly longer sustain, and a more sustained release. This gives it a little bit more body and gives it a rounder, more noble sound. Another thing worth mentioning is that I do keep the bow a little closer to the string here than I would for something like Mozart. It is definitely off the string, so each note resonates into the next one. But especially for German bow players like me, if it gets too far off the string, I think it runs the risk of being kind of picky sounding and not as full-bodied as it could be. To practice the stroke, I like to focus on practicing it in slow motion at the extremes of the bow, eventually zeroing in near the balance point. I'll often practice articulating and getting the right amount of sustain and the right character in the release near the frog, and then lifting the bow as I would in an off stroke and doing the same with an up bow near the tip. Essentially what this does is it trains the motion that you'll be using when you actually play the stroke at tempo. Practice this slowly at first, and then work on condensing the motion around the balance point of the bow. Focus on getting a clean attack and the right amount of body on each note before increasing the tempo. By the way, if you're enjoying the video, drop a like, subscribe if you haven't, and leave a comment below answering this question. Are you looking forward to auditions coming back soon? Before I get into some of my own ideas, I tend to like to consult a trusted colleague on some of their thoughts. Oftentimes others will have ideas that I never thought of on my own, so as I said in the intro, I learn something new every day. I consulted my friend John McCullough Benner about this one. John is principal bass in Milwaukee Symphony and teaches at Roosevelt University in Chicago. In his words, one of the main pitfalls of a performance of this excerpt is often maintaining the tempo. He said that it's quite common for the eighth notes to be played faster than the quarter notes, so doing a subdivision exercise helps with this. By turning all of the quarter notes and half notes into straight eighth notes, it helps the player to keep the longer note values exactly in time with the eighths. In a similar vein, something that I've found really useful on strokey excerpts like this is to practice the eighth notes with 3 bows per note to start. This lets the left hand be really slow, while also letting the bow arm get used to how the stroke feels on every single note in the excerpt. It also has the side benefit of helping the left and the right hands operate in sync, leading to a cleaner sound overall. Once this feels really comfortable, reduce that down to 2 bows per note, then try playing it normally. Two really common places to lose rhythmic integrity is this section and this section. For these, try focusing on feeling the space in between each entrance. For this section, I just say 1, 2 in my head during the rests. And for this section, I just count the number of octave repetitions on each downbeat until I get to 6, which not only holds the rhythm together, but also helps me track how many times I've repeated the octaves. 1, 2, 1, 2. Also, I've historically had difficulty getting this low G to speak clearly. You can try practicing playing the passage but stopping on the G to practice getting it to articulate before putting it back into context. Okay, so once you get all of those things in place, it's time to start adding some phrasing and musicality to the presentation. I remember once I played this for Chris Hanelick at Aspen. He is principal bass of LA Phil, so naturally I was super nervous. He suggested practicing to try to vibrate every single quarter note of the excerpt. The idea is that even if you don't actually vibrate every single one, you can definitely vibrate some of them, and each one that you're able to vibrate is going to add that much more life to your presentation. You can even use it, for example, to accentuate how the phrase sort of tears up to the top of the phrase. Another thing that's always good to keep in mind is phrasing with the line. Now, I've talked about this before, but essentially what you want to do is drop slightly as the line descends and crescendo to the top of the phrase, adding direction to the line. One final note about dynamics before we wrap this up. It used to always puzzle me how exactly I should execute the decrescendo near the end. Should I play that first pickup note at the louder dynamic and then decrescendo? I've actually found that tearing it down is the best option. So you play the first iteration at the full forte volume. Then you play the second one softer, and then taper that down towards the end of that for the decrescendo. Then you play the rest of the excerpt piano. I also find that you can make most of the dynamic change and playing it piano for the rest of the excerpt by reducing the sustain aspect of the stroke. Definitely helps to quiet things down. But what do you think? It's highly possible that I left something out that may have helped you on this excerpt, so if you have any additional thoughts or suggestions, definitely let me know down in the comments. Also, be sure to give John a follow on Instagram. He is at McCullough-Benner and I am at Bobby.Sharman. Links to both of those in the description. A big thank you to the Patreon supporters that you see on screen right now. If you'd like to support the channel, the best way is to like this video and subscribe, but if you want to support further, there's a link to my Patreon in the description. As always, thank you very much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day today, and I do look forward to seeing you in the next video. Catch you later. Bye.